So here in letter 19, before Screwtape can get back to the topic of being in love, upon that feeling, he has to go on this little tangent. He has to, defend himself. Because apparently there was something that was said earlier in one of his previous letters that implicated him to being what, the demons would call a heretic. Now, of course, a heretic, we would believe, is someone who is, departing from what is orthodox, departing from the truth. Someone who is saying, a lie. Now, in this case, because it's a demon being claimed to be a heretic, they would actually be falling into the opposite trap. To be a heretic, he would have to actually say something that was, true. And the thing that he said that, in a sense, is indeed true, is that God actually loves us. That's something that, the demons, in a sense, don't believe. They're very suspicious of. Because the whole idea of love to them is just absolutely impossible. It's not something that, makes any sort of rational sense. And, part of us would agree, right? We would partly agree that there's something about love that fundamentally, it's not rational. But you see, we would believe that something about love not being rational is actually because it goes above or beyond reason. That it's not something that is less than reason and therefore irrational, but the love that a mother has for her son or that a husband has for his wife, that selfless gift of, one's own person, desiring actually the good of another prior to any sort of good of their own, that's not something that is below reason. That's something that goes above reason. That's something that is higher than reason. That is something that is truly divine. That's what we would believe. But a demon doesn't see it that way. They see love as something being below reason. That there is actually some other hidden reason why God would actually do what he is doing for his creatures. Why he would actually give himself completely in order to save them, in order to redeem them. The demon would think that there's got to be some ulterior motive. That God has got to, in some way, shape, or form, gain from something. That God has to stand to make out with something in this scenario. And because they can't see it, they can't go along with it. In fact, Screwtape insinuates that this is actually the chief cause for the fall of the devil. That once the whole idea of human beings kind of came about, once the idea of the human beings were going to be created was known by the angelic beings, the devil went up to God to demand, basically, his rationale, his reason. And God gave him the response that he was actually, going to love his creatures. That he was actually going to, in a sense, see in them a true good. A good that was worthy of his own self-gift. And the devil couldn't understand this. He says, that doesn't, you're God, you're beyond and above them. Why would you ever have any need to actually, enter into a relationship to love them? And because it wasn't, rational in his mind, it was something to be rebuked until he actually got a real reason, according to him. It just kind of plays into not only the devil, but also just the demon's disbelief in the actual experience of love, the disbelief of the actual true sacrifice of love, and the communion and the unity that love causes. And so anyway, Screwtape goes on to that long defense because he doesn't want to be called a heretic for actually believing that God actually loves us. So he says, no, he doesn't believe it. He is still putting out that hope that one day the demons will actually kind of come around to figure out what the true reason God has for doing what he's done in creating us and in redeeming us, as if there's still some secret. But we know that there's no secret beyond, just the mystery of love. And the devil wasn't willing to well, accept that mystery of love, um, and that's why he fell. But then finally, when Screwtape gets done with that, he gets back to, well, that question. He gets back to the question of this experience of falling in love or feeling in love or being in love, whether or not it's good or bad. And the interesting take is, because we would think, well, of course it's good, right? But the interesting take is what Screwtape admits, that actually the feeling of being in love, the feeling that we get of infatuation, etc., that's neither good nor bad. He says it's basically amoral, that those feelings are just an occasion. They are an opportunity. They are an invitation, but one that we can say yes to or no to. It's not that they are always good, and so therefore must always be gone with, that whenever we have those feelings, that it is just a absolutely good thing, and so therefore we cannot deny what is good. But nor is it a bad thing, that when we get those feelings, we should somehow always shun them and push them away. It's just, well, it's a feeling. And what we do with our feelings is really the most important question. Not whether we have the feeling or not. That will come. And once we have those feelings, the next question is, well, what are we actually going to, well, do about it? And Screwtape tells Wormwood that which direction you should go to try to tempt the person into either thinking that it's always good or into thinking that it's always bad, kind of depends on the type of person that is the patient. That if the person tends towards being kind of arrogant or cynical, prideful, then he said that it's usually better to try to make them think that this feeling in love, this being in love, is always a bad thing. To lead them by their pride into a suspicion of that feeling, so that they would kind of cut themselves off from being compelled by that very natural attraction to actually higher things. So, in one sense, if you think that falling in love or being in love is a bad thing and it's always a bad thing to be ignored, what you're doing is you're actually, well, cutting yourself off from what that natural attraction leads us to, which ought to be, well, love. The other type of person on the other extreme would be someone who's really emotional or gullible, as he says. And to these sorts of people, he recommends making that experience of feeling in love to be always a good thing, so that they will just be, well, irresistibly controlled by that feeling, that they will always, well, once they get that impulse of attraction, they'll never deny it, because they will always think that it is pointing them towards what is right, what is good, but that's not always the case. Those feelings that we get, whether we're attracted to someone of the opposite sex, whether we're attracted to ice cream, whether we're attracted to a third Big Mac for the day, that attraction, those feelings are one thing. And that we have those feelings, okay, that's kind of a given. But what we do with those feelings and how it causes us to act, that's the moral question. And that's what we should be really focused on, not on whether or not the feeling itself is good or bad. At the very end here, Screwtape just says, a lot of people think what is basically just kind of a given in life, the raw material of our experience, that we kind of give them sort of a moral quality. We give them a sense of being either good or bad, whether it's our age or our youth, whether it's wartime or peacetime, whether we're healthy or whether we're sick. Those things are just givens in life. Being sick shouldn't be thought of as being necessarily bad, just like being healthy shouldn't be thought of as being necessarily good. Whether we're sick or healthy, we can be good or we can be bad in both of those situations. We can allow our sickness, our illness, to give glory to God, to be a cause of redemption, just like we can use our health to lead us astray and to lead us further into sin. So rather than being worried about whether we are sick or healthy or old or young, whether it's an election year or not, whatever it is, we receive what has come. We receive the circumstances of our life, and then we don't let them control us, but rather we just do, what is good in every situation. And that is letter 19.